Welcome to Business Wednesdays, geared towards helping you refine your business acumen, etiquette, and leadership skills. Whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, taking the entrepreneurial leap, or simply aiming to be a stellar professional, Business Wednesdays is your roadmap to success. Please welcome your hosts of the show, Daniel Craig Johnson and Kane William Pretorius.
Welcome back, everybody. It is this time of the week, Business Wednesdays, and I'm glad that you are tuning in our second episode on how can we empower those around us, especially Millennials and Generation Z. And we started last week with our first episode on Business Wednesdays with my co-host Kane William Pretorius. He's on the show, and we stopped in the first episode with getting to know each other a bit, getting cozy, and today we're getting into the flesh. And our first question to Kane was, if we talk autonomy in the workplace, what does that mean for you?
Okay, that's a fantastic question. So autonomy, let's define it. Autonomy is having power over your own decisions and actions. Okay, so from the workplace perspective, if we're looking at it in a leadership context, when leaders give autonomy to people who look up to them, what you are actually doing is you're giving them power over their own decisions and actions. And when you do that, you empower people. On the other hand, when you rob people of their autonomy or you take control of their decisions and actions, you will create dependents, people who will look to you for the answers their entire life. And just while we're on this topic, you always have to consider what is the purpose of leadership, all right? And when it comes to leadership, I like to think of as leader and a mentor as the same thing. And there's a beautiful saying with mentors. They only say that a mentor has succeeded when the mentee has surpassed them. In other words, the mentor gives all of their knowledge, all of their experiences onto the person who's looking up to them for guidance and knowledge. And they give everything to them. And the moment they give everything to them, they're supposed to, as the mentee, their responsibility is to take that information, add it to what they know, and leapfrog ahead of the mentor. That is the purpose of leadership. All right. It's to take what you know as the older generation and pass it on to the younger generation so that they can become better than you.
Okay, so now that you described that about autonomy and about mentors and so on and creating autonomy within the workplace, where should a leader start if they have a problem with giving autonomy? If they, for instance, they micromanage or they don't really know how to trust their people, what is the starting point?
Oh, I love that question. So you're a leader, you're currently listening to this podcast, and you're starting to understand that maybe you're in a dynamic like most of the leaders that I train where they realize that they actually rob a lot of people of their autonomy. And it's a controversial thing, okay? Because what you need to understand is a lot of the time when you rob people of their autonomy and you take control of their decisions and actions, you create dependence. And let me tell you this, it feels amazing to rob people of their autonomy. It's such a wonderful feeling. And if you're sitting there thinking, okay, that sounds a little bit sadistic, Kane. What are you talking about? I'm telling you now, I've robbed people of their autonomy before and I've absolutely loved it. And I say that to be dramatic because trust me when I say you've also robbed people of their autonomy. And I'll give you an example. The reason why it feels good when you rob people of their autonomy is usually when you do it for them, people tend to praise you for it. They tend to thank you. And that's a wonderful feeling in and of itself. I've robbed plenty of people of their autonomy without realizing it. And every single time I did it, they usually praised me for it. And who doesn't like to be praised for a job that they've done well? So I always think about this company. And this, if you want to know, I'm just giving a little context before I actually teach you what you can actually do to get started on this process. And I always think about this one story when I was teaching this concept to some leaders for a property portfolio here in South Africa. And I had some of the seniors of the organization in this training and I was talking to them. And I remember there was one gentleman in particular who sat there and he listened to me speak on this concept of autonomy and he listened to it. And by the time I was done talking about it, he stopped me and he looked and he said, Kane, this topic has hit me like a ton of bricks. As I'm sitting here at the moment, okay, what I've realized is I've got text messages coming through from people outside the office, outside the boardroom we were in, who are asking him a number of questions that he needs to help them with. And he looked at one of the questions on his phone and he's like, look at this. And he showed me a question from somebody outside the boardroom who was asking him what color highlighter they should use on the lease agreement for one of their clients. He said, I'm the regional manager for this area, and these are the questions I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So he looked and he shook his head, and he said, normally, Kane, this would have annoyed the hell out of me. I would have gone on a little bit of a rampage. But I'm suddenly starting to realize that the reason why this is happening is because I've been robbing them of their autonomy their whole life. Well, the entire career they've been working with me. Because what normally happens is when there's a problem, they come to me with the problem. When there's a client who doesn't want to sign a lease agreement, they come to me. And because I've been here for the last 20 years and I can do this stuff in my sleep, they come to me and I can point out the problems, what needs to happen in a minute. And the moment I'm done, they look at me and they say, boss, that's why you're the man. And they make me feel good about myself. It strokes my ego. And then they go off and they do it. But what they've learned is if they have this problem, they come to me and I solve it. So in this instance, I haven't given anyone autonomy. I've actually robbed them of the autonomy to make a decision, to think for themselves. And bear in mind, Daniel, your mind wants to take it easy. It's a very lazy one. It wants to be on autopilot for as long as it possibly can. It's better if it doesn't, if it's on autopilot and it gets told what to do and how to do it. It loves it. So in this instance, but the moment you do that, you create more people that are dependent on you. So as a leader, you become overworked. You're suddenly dealing with everyone else's jobs that are not in your job description. And that's the quickest way to tell if you are a leader who's not giving autonomy, if you're overwhelmed, all right? And you can't get a moment to yourself to actually do what you need to do, or even to take a break from work without people contacting you to solve their problems for them. So in this instance, what you need to do is the best place to start is when people come to you, people who are part of your team. If you're the leader, if people come to you and they're asking you for anything, what should we do with this client? What should we do on this problem? How should we handle this challenge? And they're asking you, as a leader, it is so tempting, especially when you know the answers, to just give it to them. The first thing you need to do is not give it to them. The first thing you need to do is tell them, what do you think? And then what you'll notice is two things will happen. When you give people autonomy for the first time, and they've never had autonomy before, the autopilot fights to stay on. So the first thing they will tell you is, I don't know. And the moment they say, I don't know, that is the autopilot's auto response for struggling to keep itself on. So in other words, forcing you to give them an answer. But in that moment, you need to say, well, think about it. And you need to sit there and you need to wait for them to come up with an answer. And then eventually, like the visual representation I always see is like a kickstart motor going off. It's like the motor's in idle. And then the moment you're trying to start it, it pulls and all of a sudden you see the head kick up and they start going, no. And the motor starts running, their brain starts working, where they actually start thinking of things. And that's the purpose of what I'm trying to get you to do as leaders, is to get people to think for themselves. Because a lot of the times we don't give them opportunities to think. We tell them how to think, when to do certain things. But by doing that, we're robbing them of autonomy. We're not actually growing people. And the purpose of leadership is to grow someone. And the only way you do that is by giving them autonomy, power over their own decisions and actions, to the point where they actually don't need you anymore. And if you've done that, as a mentor, as a leader, you've succeeded. But it starts with small things. Bear in mind, this is a wonderful activity, Daniel, that you can even start with. If you're a direct leader within your organization, all right, you can start it with the people that report to you. With your Monday morning meetings, when you start, instead of telling them what to do the week and how to do it, give them the objective of where you need to be by the end of the week or the end of the month or the end of the financial quarter. And then, before you speak as the leader, ask them what they think. How do you think we should handle it? And the more you do this, you should be asking more questions to understand why they have the opinion that they do and from where they're coming from. And the more you do this, the more you are starting to get them to think. You're starting to empower them. They start sharing their ideas. You want to guide them towards the right answers. You want to be transparent with them about any threats they face, about the journey there, about the solutions that they're proposing. You want to co-create solutions, because by doing this, what you're actually teaching them is that they've got the answers the entire time. This is an activity you can do with your staff. And if you're not a leader, but you are grooming yourself, because bear in mind, everyone is a leader. Whenever I do trainings, I always ask everyone, who's a leader in this room? And some people put up their hands. Those are usually the people who are in direct leadership positions. And I say everyone's hand should go up, because regardless, there's someone, it doesn't matter what station, what professional position you've come in the hierarchy of wherever you're working, what your social status is, it doesn't matter. You are a leader to someone. There's someone that looks up to you, whether it's your kids, whether it's your family members, your friends, your peers, your direct subordinates within the organization. Sometimes it may even be people above you within the organization that look up to you because you've got leadership quality. So you're a leader to someone. And the best place that you can actually start doing this, if you want to figure out where to do this and you're not directly have anyone reporting to you, is start with your children. Children are the perfect example. And for example, my goddaughters are the perfect example. Whenever they used to come to me, they would always say, and bear in mind, I want the best things for them. They're my goddaughters. So they always used to come to me before I understood this concept, and they would say, Uncle Cade, what should I do when it comes to this? And I would give them the answer because I know it and I want them to not make any mistakes. I want them to have a better life than we did. So I give them the answers. I'm always tempted to do that. And then I realized this concept of autonomy. By giving them the answers, I'm robbing them of their autonomy, and I'm not actually of the experience of making a decision and living with the consequences of their decision. All I'm teaching them is that when they have problems, they come to me. And that, Daniel, is how millennials actually became known as the snowflake generation. And so instead of doing that nowadays, what I actually do is the moment they come to me and they say, Uncle Kane, what should I do in this problem? I tell them, what do you think you should do? And the defense mechanism kicks in. I don't know. And then I force them to think about it. I tell them, stand here and think of a solution. And then they start coming up with solutions, and their brain eventually starts working and they start coming up with something. That is how you give people autonomy. You force them to think. And then the most important thing is when they do come up with a solution, provided this, like, let's say they come up with a solution that is not going to work out. Do you know what I let them do then, Daniel? I let them do it. And if it doesn't work out and they end up failing, that for me is an even more valuable lesson for my girls. The reason being is because they learned that they made a decision about something, they implemented it, and it didn't work out. But they learned that they didn't die. So I want them to be able to get up, realize, dust themselves off, and I'll say, well, what you going to do now? So provided the solution they come up with is not detrimental to their health, I will try and ask them questions to get them to come up with the ideas or see the pitfalls in their ideas. And if they don't, sometimes I let them do it, because learning how to make mistakes and actually live with it afterwards is what builds resilience. It's what built the stronger generations before millennials and Gen Z came along. And bear in mind, I'm a millennial. We got dubbed as the snowflake generation because we crumble under pressure. We're the generation that won participation trophies for just showing up.
Absolutely.
All right. So now we get to the workplace, and now I'm not coming first place in my sales targets. I'm actually coming last. I'm not making sales targets. But instead of getting a trophy and telling me that I'm special, I'm now getting written warnings. We were never prepared for this. So that's the reason why. So we need to put ourselves in kind of harder situations. We need to be able to make these decisions in order to build our autonomy. But as a leader, it's your responsibility to give people the opportunity to think for themselves. You have to make them do it.
Absolutely, make them do it and ask questions. Leader as a coach. That's why many companies adopt that attitude of having their leaders become coaches or coach internally and learn more about coaching so that you can ask the right questions, that you can empower your people in that area. I think a big part of this is also you're not only robbing them of autonomy, but you're also robbing them of their curiosity. And I think curiosity in the workplace, if it is implemented and fostered in the right way, it can be incredibly powerful. If you look at kids, let's say kids trying to figure out how to make a snowman in 30 degrees weather. They're going to go and get buckets. They're going to go get sand. They might come into your house and take the bucket of water and try to put it into the freezer and put it out again. And maybe they don't really understand that at 30 degrees, that is not a conducive environment to create a snowman. But what you will recognize is that they will bring all the toys and tools. They will bring everything they can find. And even if it's most ridiculous, but they are open to try all these different angles, and eventually throughout that process they will find a lot of lessons for themselves, and maybe they even end up finding a solution to make that snowman. But that is not what it's about. It's more about that journey, that curiosity, and that they throw all the tools that they have at the problem. And sometimes that's exactly the right approach, understanding that obviously in a business setting we need to be more effective, and obviously we don't have time to sit around for a month and be curious about a problem that we have to solve within a deadline. But you understand what I'm getting at with that curiosity. And that's what we also rob people of very often when we take away their autonomy, because they become functional, they operate, they just do what they need to do. They come every day, as you say, they clock the check, and they lose all their curiosity about work and about the problems at hand and about each other. And that can be very detrimental to the energy or the dynamic, whether it's in a team or a company in general.
100%. Curiosity is a wonderful thing. It's where innovation comes from. And you never want to stifle that by teaching people how to think.
Exactly. And when we talk about teaching people how to think, then we're coming to the point of trust. And trust very often is exactly the reason why people get robbed of their autonomy in the workplace, because there's someone that doesn't trust, someone that doesn't think that they can get the job done by themselves, maybe because they have been conditioned that whatever you do it best by yourself. And that is obviously totally counterproductive to leadership in the first place and also to autonomy. In the coaching environment, very often one of the major points is that we end up at trust, and then it comes down to not trusting, therefore micromanaging, therefore taking away that autonomy for people to make decisions by themselves because we're scared that they make the wrong decisions, because they haven't learned through proper process how to make mistakes within reason and then fix them, grow from them, and therefore rather have the attitude of consistently coming back to the leader, asking the questions in order not to do things wrong. And particularly in companies that are fear-driven, where every single mistake that is being made has severe consequences, where maybe even bullying, abuse is a point. So then people lose trust, and that is a two-way street. So the leaders lose trust as well because they know they can't trust the people below, or maybe they have never given them the opportunity to prove that they are trustworthy. And then the same thing happens the other way around. And there we go. We are in a cycle, in a downward spiral. And that is where not only autonomy, but also curiosity and many, many other things go out of the window. But yes, that was it for the second episode of Business Wednesdays. Trust me, guys, next week we have some interesting questions. We're going to go into more detail and talk about very interesting things in terms of giving people autonomy and millennials and Generation Z. And I hope that you tune in next week, Wednesday. We keep the episode short. We want you to be able to listen to it whilst you're driving to work or on the gym, on the crosswalker, or whatever floats your boat. So keep on tuning in and join us on this journey with Business Wednesdays with Kane William Pretorius and myself. Thank you, Kane. Guys, we promise we'll be back next Wednesday. I hope that you have a fantastic week and take care.